Hey, what's up? Thank you for joining us. This is the Gridiron Survivor Project. This is a Discord of mine called Let's Get Technical. It's a group that I've put together to build a project for my friend. We're building a NFL project to figure out who the last survivor is in picking teams. But along the way, as I've been helping engineers and self-taught engineers and boot campers, I realized that there's a missing gap that there's left to kind of fend for themselves. So this project is to bring people together to work as a team, but to also work in a corporate process, planning, understanding what they're doing code reviews together, working closely together, and separately into their roles as well. We have the UX engineering role, we have a front end engineer, and then we have software engineer, which they do a lot of the DevOps and back end items. But I'm hoping that by building in public and by sharing in public, these individuals will be seen and you will hire them because along this way, they will learn and grow and you'll see their journey along the way. So, the first thing I want to do was talk about our sponsors. We do have three sponsors: Pastel, Front End Mentor, and Appwrite. We thank them for everything that they do for us because without them, then this project would cost a lot more money to do. So, which is fantastic. But thank you for our sponsors. And the next phase is going to be a couple of sprint demos. We have four demos today. We have one with Carlos about Docker, our Docker container, and how that's ran. And then Jason's going to talk about Appwrite and integration to that API. And then M is going to talk about our storybook implementation and how that's going to work. And then mine's going to talk about Playwright and how it's integrated into our application and how it works. So first off, we are going to go to Carlos. All right, let me flip this around, Carlos. And then, Carlos, you want to switch your screen to your presentation?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Let me know when you're showing.
All right, we are ready.
Okay, hi, my name is Carlos. I'm a software engineer for this project. And today I'm going to give you a little rundown on how we start our project. And it all starts with a command called docker compose. Up at dev. You see that's so what it'll do is it'll look for our YAML file. So Docker Compose will define where we get our image from. So that's our container repo. It'll define the ports. It'll define the volume, and this just helps the changes show up in the container once we make them. And this defines our this environment is the development environments. And down here we have our production. And once we enter in this command, it'll check and see if we have this image available in our local computer. If not, it will download it from our container repo. And then once it does that, it will run the image in the container. So the image we're running for our development environment is listed here in our dockerfile.dev. And it specifies many things. It specifies our operating system, our working directory, where the package manager we're installing. It'll copy over the the file with the dependencies, and it'll install them, copy everything else, run the project, and expose the port. And here it even has a label for everything for this image.
Cool. Let me ask you, the port itself, is that a port that you created or is that a recommended port from Docker?
You can specify any port. So,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. So once I run it, you'll see here. Now we didn't see it install or download the image from our container repo because I already have it. And here it shows the logs as if we're running on our local computer.
Okay.
You can see here our project.
Oh, perfect.
And then here is our image for our production. You'll notice a small difference. One is that we create a non-root user and then switch to it. This follows like a practice called least privilege, where we try to run our project in production with the least amount of privileges. So if there's any exploits or anything, that it won't. Hopefully,
And
it
what's the
won't cause.
difference between a non-root user and a root user?
Well, basically, a root user can just run all the commands, while a non-root user can't. So it limits the permissions
Okay.
for what
So
can be run.
with the commands, is there a way to say, hey, for this command, only root users can run that? Or is it like a Docker set of commands that are set in stone?
Um, for that, I'm not entirely sure, but
Okay. Yeah, we should definitely look into that.
yeah. Okay.
That way we can have custom permissions.
All right. Okay, so our container is running here, but we can run the command docker compose down. Dev, and it'll stop our container. What it does is it'll delete the container off of our local computer, and it won't necessarily delete the image; it'll just keep it there. But it'll update it if there's any changes. So that's it deletes the container so that it doesn't take up memory.
Cool. So it deletes and recreates it, correct?
Yes.
Nice. Nice.
Okay, that's pretty much the whole process, how we do things.
You know how when you went to localhost 3000 and it had that GIF?
Yeah.
Is that's because that's the only thing we have right now in our index, correct?
Right.
Okay. So if we had an application running or whatnot, then it would show the application.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any questions?
This view here. I do have some questions, but anybody else have any questions for Carlos?
And we're in the process of moving this to Appwrite, correct? I think that's what we've been doing, Shashi, is this container is awesome. And we're in the process of moving everything to Appwrite for cell hosting. My question is there, we can use any other port besides 3000, right? But we kind of want to use 3000. Is that just because Next.js has the default as the 3000 port?
Next.js, well, not exactly. I don't think there is a default port that we have, so I think it would be defined in our package.
Yeah, if that's a reserved port from Brussels or somebody else, then we can always change that port number to be something custom, so it doesn't clash.
Yeah, so it can be anything.
So I have a question about the setup. I know you're running it in here, but locally, do I have to download like an application or something with Docker to allow me to run this container locally?
Yeah, you have to. You just have to download Docker itself. Like there's an application that's Docker tells you to download, and it's like the GUI application, but it also comes with everything you need, like the CLI and stuff like that. So right now, I only have the CLI downloaded. So
got it. So if I didn't have that and I tried to run this script, it wouldn't work, correct?
Right. If you didn't have Docker installed in your computer, it wouldn't work.
Okay, good to know. Anybody else have any comments or questions about this Docker setup?
Shashi, Richard asked from LinkedIn, when making changes to the app, do we need to have Docker running in the background while those are being made?
Yes. So when you run Docker, it'll show your application. And
wait, the better question is, why is Richard not here?
That is a good question. I was wondering that
I was wondering the same thing.
Richard. That's all right. Hey, he's giving us some questions to look at.
So we specified the volume in our Docker compose file to kind of keep track of like changes that happens in our application. And once those
Okay.
changes happen, it will re-render
Oh,
the
cool.
changes. So
Nice. So if you have it running, it watches for the changes as the changes happen in the volume, right? It has to be set in the volume. Then it will then auto hydrate and re-render.
So
right, something like that.
Okay.
could you actually run this without Docker?
Yeah, we could totally run this without
All right.
Docker. So we just do pnpm. I think it was run dev. Yeah. Oh,
Permission denied. It works.
permission
It
denied.
works. Good. So I just wanted to make sure that, because then that way we're all forced to kind of use the same environment during development.
Yeah. We're because we've shifted a little bit. We were gonna go away from Vercel hosting, but now we're gonna go to Vercel. Vercel has its own Docker container when they create it, and locally, I
Right.
think Chris and Carlos are gonna discuss on how we can run Docker locally, because that way we can contain all of our packages and our dependencies. And someone that may have like nodes 18, but somebody has like node 14 can, and there's might be some issues there with dependencies. We have this contained Docker container that houses all that, and we're all being in the kind of the same environment.
Yeah, Docker is supposed to solve the issue of like everyone has different environments because the container itself, you can kind of think of it as a virtual machine, just one that runs in the background and uses less resources. So, it just runs the operating system we defined and all that good stuff. So, yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions? Well, yeah, I'm gonna expect you to be experts at this. Then tomorrow you gotta run it up and spin it up. Okay, Jason said, "Yep." Okay, got it.
Yeah, I'm nailing that. I've been messing around with the containers for a little while, but this is definitely the Wild West to me as far as like the
Yeah.
back end stuff.
I
Yeah.
messed around with a little bit. I got a weird error on mine because I'm running a MacBook with the silicone chip. So I got a weird error. So we can go through that a little offline later.
Yeah, you'll have actually.
Yeah,
I
we
want to
can
see
talk
what you're
about that.
getting because I might be getting the same one.
Are you on a silicone?
Nice.
Yeah.
Looks
Sick.
like it's a known bug that y'all have to work together through. Well, we will all work together through. Cool. Thank you, Carlos, for showing us Docker and how our setup is ran. All right, so next we have Jason. Jason, gotta find
Hello.
your screen.
Find it.
Got it.
As I mentioned to everybody, my assets for Appwrite apparently weren't permitted yet, so I got to get to that. But anyway, I'm a front end engineer on Gridiron, and I will be presenting some Appwrite data and how we're going to be implementing that. Just to give you guys a little bit of background on Appwrite, Eldad founded the project based on an open source project. It was like just a side hustle that he was doing, and then he decided to get it up and active as its first open source in 2019. And it's here's you. Can you guys see these?
Yep.
Sweet. It's an open source back end service for developers. Provides pre-built features like auth, database management, real-time functionality. It's going to drastically reduce our time as far as with the server side code that we need to write. It's going to allow us to focus more of the resources on the front end where the user experience really is. I don't know why this keeps going back. There we go. Which there you go. There's all that. We decided on Appwrite as the back end because as they're continuing to add features in their updates, it's making them one of the leaders in the market, which there are several features that I think the project can heavily rely on. Just sign in, sign up is a very big one, which we'll talk about in a second. Also, the messaging service, which is just coming out. I really want to at some point get that figured out as well. Oh my God, why does this keep doing this? I got to figure out these slides, guys. Anyway, I don't have any live code demos, but I did pull up my Appwrite application, which does implement a lot of these features, so you can kind of see them in action as well. As far as for sign-in, Gridiron, as far as I know, we're going to have multiple different levels of access for the users, which can all be toggled on and off in the console, which allows you to kind of manage the permissions of all the users very easily. It's a robust set of options when it comes to the auth, but as we talked about previously, we're just going to be doing the basic email and password sign up to start. I do see Steven here. Hey, man. Giving us auth in a simple tab in the console, which again, which this would have been a good slide to put this on. The Appwrite console, which we have access to, allows us to just get to all of the features on the fly, database storage, all the functions and everything. With the SDKs, we're going to be able to quickly implement the auth to whatever level we need and go as far as at having code samples that we can use to get started. So there's also just a lot of copy paste simple code structures that we can go right into and grab and then pull out. Hold on. I'm just looking at what Steven wrote to see if he was talking about this. All right.
He was talking about Docker.
Yeah, I see that.
And
Him and his Docker.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, can I ask a quick question on
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
Jason?
Yeah, go ahead, bud.
Go back one. And this is maybe even for Steven in the chat. I know this is using client side right now. And I know that the cloud version is not at 1.5 yet.
Yeah, which I was going to talk about.
Got it. I'll let you
in a couple of these. No. That's a great question, because there is an asterisk to all of this. There are some of these features that aren't available to us for the cloud yet on the on server side. So that good catch. I already lost where I was here. You're good. Yes, the messaging feature. I think for any sort of user access, obviously some sort of welcome message would be great. Any sort of updates in real time. And Appwrite, again, did bring this feature in the 1.5 release, which is local right now. Cloud is coming out, which we should be seeing soon. But I think that that's going to give us, again, better access to the user management, being able to send them welcome messages, notifying them of any changes or wins, losses, setting lineups. I think that gives our manager of the app, the person that's going to be like coordinating everything, a lot better access to the client as well. And again, that can be done via, go ahead, Shashi.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah. And this is going to be a phase 2 implementation, but it's nice to call it out.
Yeah, I think for the MVP, it obviously probably isn't necessary, and there are some extra steps. We'd either have to go through SMTP, some sort of an email client. We can do SMS, but again, there's proprietary backend stuff that we have to tie into that as well to get all that running. But, a good thing to look at in the future. The database, which I think is obviously the bread and butter of why we're going here as a backend as a service. They've got several options of how to use the database and storage features. The option of server-side storage is available using the server SDK. And I'm personally not sure the full extent of the data we're going to be keeping for the project. Obviously, you've got your user profiles, team settings, probably weekly schedules, but we haven't really fleshed any of that out that I'm aware of. But again, it's for storage. We could probably also be putting images, because again, that is separate from the databases, but we can put our graphics in there. And then I put a few notes. Appwrite uses collections as containers of documents. Each collection contains documents identical in structure. The terms collection and documents are used because the Appwrite REST API resembles the API of a traditional NoSQL database. Especially with Chris working on this, I know he's very familiar and comfortable with the database feature, and this is also something that is available now for us to use. So,
all right. So let me ask you guys something. Can you go back?
Yeah.
So now Appwrite right now is a NoSQL database, right? And sometimes we'll need some relations between some of the collections and stuff like that. Is there an easy way to do that? Because I know with the relational database, you can create multiple tables and then relate them together. With Appwrite's API and all that stuff, is that a possibility?
The short answer is yes, but I want Chris to answer this one.
The short answer is also yes. So there's a lot of you may not use left join, right join type terms, but you can do one-to-one, many-to-manys. And the great thing about NoSQL is that you can do that. It's just how you fetch the data that's a little bit different. In fact, one of the init releases that week was some helpers, I believe, to help with some of those relational type queries on the database itself. So I don't foresee this being an issue. But we'll have to mess with it, and I know we got some great people at Appwrite willing that we can talk to help us out through that.
Looking at you, Steven. We see you there, buddy.
Hey, one thought that I have, and it's just a generic question, Jason, that we should figure out. And this is something that I'm completely. You can run client and server together, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why. What would your thought? I guess what's your thought process?
Well, for example,
potentially.
Well, for example, the database right now is like if you look at the example on the screen, that's running Node Appwrite, which is the server SDK. Great. And then on the authentication right now, we'll be using the client side SDK. Right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So my thought was we would in the lib folder, we would create an Appwrite server and create an instance of a server client. And then in the lib Appwrite client folder, create an instance of client that would be that we can pull into our different components that may need that. That was what I was thinking we would do here. Stephen, if you're still listening,
that's really good, Chris, because that is going to be something that we need to do, is to architect our structure and everything. Because as you all know, like most of you have just worked independently, and it's easy, right, to just do everything all in one, simple, all this stuff. But once you work in teams and a larger scale application, you need to decouple a lot of these things into smaller pieces and smaller chunks. That way they can be reused, they can be used over here, over there, but not for that case as well. For testing purposes, you can test smaller pieces in isolation, opposed to testing like a file that's 500 lines of code. You're testing 20, and that's a lot easier to write variations to ensure things are working. And so the architecture of how we're going to do this, so we will be doing that as well, is like what we call architecture review. We'll have you guys come up with those proposals, and then we'll discuss about it and figure out if that is the right approach or not. I will be there. I'm going to try to have Mike there too, Mike Chen from our community. He is the CTO of, what is this company called again? Motivo. and you know, he's very experienced, and whoever else we can get that's experienced in architecture design to come and really help and guide y'all too, because that's the whole point of this, right? Is not for you to decide, but to get some experience and get some feedback so you can do this the right way.
Well, and you know, there's that's extremely valid and helpful, because we also have the new server actions that we can use from client components. So now it's with Next.js, right? You can have a client component, and from a form, you can pass data to a server action, and then that is run on the server to be able to change and update, fetch, request, whatever to the database. So it's exciting, but yeah, we're gonna have to talk through what is going to be work.
Yeah, be a little bit of work, but I think it makes sense.
Yeah, we got a quick comment from Dominic. This looks great. So cool to see this come together. So many good folks working on this. Thank you, Dominic.
Thanks,
Dominic.
Dom.
What up?
Number one fan.
The man, the myth, the legend.
A mustache.
The mustache, and the man who likes to put he loves the outdoors. He loves Dominic, that outdoors.
J mustache Onico. All right, where were we? Yeah, so I think one of the other big ones for this project is the real-time functionality, which obviously is giving us send and read and write in real time. And I can show you guys that with Chatright in a second here. Again, there's some code snippets just readily available that we can punch in to toggle those subscriptions to read that back and forth. I think it gives us the ability to see user changes as they happen. Again, as soon as they set a lineup or as soon as they pick a team, they should be able to instantaneously see that effect, which would also update across the server to any of the other people viewing the data. And again, I think it's one of the most important ones. Through the use of the subscribe method, we'll be able to listen to the events and receive data at any time it changes. For an app that does rely heavily on user interaction, being able to show users their picks at the click of a button seems like a high priority to me. Via WebSocket connection, we can bring this data to them within milliseconds. I haven't looked at any of the actual data as far as response time for this, but again, I'll show you guys here in a live feed or presentation, and it's very fast. So
All right, so stay here.
Yep.
This is going to be a interview question for you. You ready?
Go for it.
All right. Can you explain to us what WebSocket does?
I honestly cannot. I I had it written down as some of my notes here because I did want to flesh it out. But no, I mean, I understand the process or like what it implements, but I don't know that.
Why don't you try
breakdown.
to tell us what you know of it?
Let me get back over to my thing here. Oh, okay. Yeah. So basically, it's just like a port for communication back and forth between like browser and server. So it's that interface.
Let me ask you this: is it open all the time? Is it only open certain seconds? Is it?
I believe that it is triggered by the function that we would be putting in here. So I do not believe that it is open at all times. It's like a read-write access.
Okay. I believe it's.
You can just say it's wrong.
I believe like, it's correct. It's always open and it listens when you make a change. That's how it will know. And so between WebSockets, short polling and long polling, do y'all know what the differences are? Anybody can answer.
I bet you know, Shashi.
I do know.
Hit us with it.
Okay, short polling is kind of delayed, right? Like you say, okay, every 2 seconds, like make a poll, right? Then because WebSockets is always open, right? So when when you make a change, it knows, right? I think how was it short polling or long polling that does that? But then for short polling, there's a delay, right? So it doesn't do it instantly. It'll do like let's say it's every 5 seconds, right? Every 5 seconds, if it knows there's a request, then after if it fits between that time frame, then it'll catch it and then it will respond. WebSockets is always open. So for that matter, it helps because it's interactive right away, but it's performance-wise, it's not like the greatest too. It has increased. It has gotten better. A lot of people use it. A lot of companies use it because it is much faster for response. But something that works for like offline and all that offline data very well is like long polling and short polling, because then it receives the data and then every let's say it says every 10 minutes, it takes in whatever you've compiled. It'll take that and it'll upload it to wherever it wants to go.
Nice. I guess that's something that we could consider. I'm looking at some notes here as far as like short, long, and versus WebSockets, and it does look like some of them are a little bit more intensive as far as like resources on the servers too. So I don't know how much traffic we'd be looking at, but that might be something that we should also look at.
Yeah, it's definitely not something we need to worry about right now.
I figured, but
okay. But just FYI, these are the kind of questions I'll bring up for these things, because I don't want us just to like go through the motions and be like, okay, we're gonna do it. Like I want you guys to dig in and understand these things too, because behind the scenes, like, okay, back when I used to do it, we didn't have WebSockets, right? And all this fancy stuff, and now we do, which is fantastic. But you need to understand what happens when WebSockets is not the answer, right? Then what do you go with, and why do we go with it? By understanding the why, then we understand how it works. In this case, it works because the application is going to run and do whatnot. But in other cases, it may not work. So,
yeah, nope, that definitely makes sense, and that was a great question. I appreciate it. And then here, I just had a few more final thoughts. Let me get over to my notes here so I can follow through with this, because these were some of the things that Mai had brought up. Appwrite has the ability to significantly lower the learning curve in comparison to, like, Mai had brought up Express.js due to its pre-built APIs and features. Express would require a little bit deeper understanding of Node.js and some of the backend concepts, because you're going to have to build all of that. For someone starting out like me and some of the other people, it's a very turnkey solution that I think can give us a lot of function with a little bit of code. And as far as some other comparisons, Appwrite provides SDKs and APIs for interacting with its services. It takes away a lot of the complexity of managing the code base for data fetching. Whereas again, with Express, it requires you to write custom routes and middleware for the same tasks. It gives you more control over the process as well. Appwrite's got the built-in database services with NoSQL. It also provides database management with SDKs and APIs. And I think that's pretty much it. Oh, and then the web tokens, I forgot about that as well. All of that can be handled right through Appwrite's APIs. We can have authentication, generation, verification, and management as well. If we were using Express.js or something else, you'd have to implement that manually, or again, use some sort of a middleware packet. So, again, just kind of streamlining some of those operations for us.
Cool. Any questions, comments?
Just a comment, Jason. This was awesome, man. Really, really thank you for that deep dive into it. I know you got something to show. I can't wait to see. I haven't seen your thing yet. Your chat rat. My lip is not working.
Chat rat. Hold on. I will. I'll share my next thing here.
Okay.
And one other thought while you're pulling that up, Jason, is and Jason, I've been looking into this, and this is just a side note for all of us. If you notice, a lot of their code snippets just have JavaScript; they don't have TypeScript yet. So we're going to have to either come up with our own type generics, and we'll have to figure that out. So it's not a negative at all. I know they're working on it. But
but that's the good thing. Guess what we could do? We can build it, and then it's Appwrite's open source, right?
That's what I'm thinking.
Can hand it off to them.
Hand it off to them and contribute. And be like, hey, we built this. You can take it, you extend it, whatever you want. We contributed to Appwrite's code base. There we go.
I think it's great. So far, their documentation has been amazing. Okay, go, Jason.
Yeah. So I mean, again, this is just a very basic sign in, sign up pages, which again is just using their code base for it. I forget I won't go through this. I'll just sign in. Why isn't it working? I broke it.
It's not working because you're demoing. So that's kind of, oh no.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Let's do it live.
Oh, that's sick. That is sick. It is live.
I know. Every time we do something, every time somebody does something live, this happens. So I'm gonna give you guys a trick. At my company, at Microsoft,
I should have had it loaded.
We record our demos so that this stuff doesn't happen. I want you guys to do it live so you can feel the pressure and so that you can.
I know. I should have tried it.
So you know what I'm getting at. So this is good to do it live and to do all that stuff, because then people get to see you actually like learn and explain things. We can ask questions on the fly.
That's
so it's more interactive.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Well, anyway, obviously we know we can modify this to just have email or password. The only thing that we would have seen in there in the actual chat is the real time where you hit send and your message immediately drops right into the chat. Very, very quick. And that was really the only thing I wanted to highlight outside of, again, these basic sign in, sign up cards. So that's all I got. I'll make sure it is working the next time.
Cool. Any other questions or comments from anybody else?
Jason, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's Corinne. Okay.
Hey.
Thank you so much for this. I mean, I don't know much about backend. I work with Firebase a little bit, but I don't think that counts. So my question might be the too specific or too off base. So, don't feel bad if you don't have an answer for it. While looking into accessibility for magic links, and I know we're not going to implement that in the beginning, but now I'm just like curious. So I was asking about the kind of feedback like a user you would need. Let's say they put in their email, yes, and then they're supposed to get a link, a sign up link in their email mailbox. And let's say the email address is valid. So it has all the parts of an email address, but maybe there's a typo. Okay. And I was looking into, okay, are we giving any feedback to the user? Are we actually, maybe there's an alert saying, okay, you said if this email exists, you will receive a link. But then they told me that actually the backend will take care of this. And I kind of like didn't understand what that meant. Meaning we will verify that that email address that was typed by the user actually exists in a database. I don't know if that makes sense, but it kind of didn't make
does.
sense.
Mhm.
Okay. And it is actually true that's going to happen in the sense that, they put the email, there's a typo, and they will be told, actually, this email doesn't exist in our database or something like that.
That's correct. So, well, there's two things. If there's a typo, right, it's going to go to the database and it's going to say, it's going to say, hey, email doesn't exist, and it's going to go through the whole process. And if it doesn't exist, it's going to try to email that. If it's the wrong email, it could go to another completely different person, right? So we are checking to make sure it's a valid email. Is it a valid email address? And we're going to probably, I don't know how we're going to do that yet, but probably using some regex, just to validate the email. We can probably check to see if there's bounces, but yeah, it's going to check if it's valid or not. But I mean, I don't know. That's a really good question, Shashi. I don't know what to do if they typed it in wrong, but it still goes through.
Yeah, that's a user error. That has nothing to do with us. We can't dictate like when a user types it in wrong incorrectly, right? They like what we could do is do okay, register, and then what we say is, hey, confirm your email. And if they never receive it, then they can figure out like, okay, here's the email. Like it will say, here's the email, we sent it to this email. They'll have to look at that closely. We have no way to know if they typed it incorrectly or not. But if they did and it's in our database, then we could check that, right? Then we could say, oh, it matches. We're good. We just got to check the password and then we're going to go, right? If not, then there's no, like, you cannot test that. Like, it would be a lot of work to figure that out. And it's more so user error than anything.
Right, because you could only check for it. Did it bounce? Meaning it definitely isn't valid. But here's the thing: if you type in the wrong email and it goes to someone who has that email, there's nothing you can do.
It's nothing we can do. Like we can't do it. That's the user error. Yeah.
But if anything, Karina, there will be a response. I mean, if when we get to the magic URL portion, if it's whether it exists or doesn't exist, the email is going to go through.
Yep. And then you brought a good point about validation too. Something that we'll look into is PCI compliance. Something you guys will have to learn and understand on like what's acceptable to show when errors come out. Like if somebody presses in a wrong password, but the email's correct, you're not supposed to say, hey, your password's incorrect. That's not compliant. You just need to say, hey, there's an error. So PCI compliance, there's a lot of compliances that we'll have to go through and understand on what's acceptable and what's not, because security is a big thing nowadays, right? Because if you say password's not right for me, guess what? I know the email's correct. Yep. I'm gonna try, right? Well, a bot can just figure out, like it'll eventually get in.
Shosh, let me ask you a question. If we're using magic links, there is no passwords.
Correct.
Yeah. But
I was speaking more so of like a username and password.
Oh yeah.
So there'll be things that we'll learn along the way with that, and that those are kind of some things that when these features come up, I'll task you guys with figuring this stuff out, and these are the things we'll learn, right? Opposed to just going out and building it. It's like, wait, hold on, go learn what PCI compliance is first, and then present it to us, and then after that we'll move on. or while you're doing that, we can move on. That way you're building an understanding, like from a security standpoint, that what we're building is going to be secure. Cool. Thanks for that question, Corina.
Sure.
Anybody else?
Steven chimed in and said, what
There you
you
go.
said would also apply to Magic URL auth as well. So,
Oh, okay. Good to know, Steven.
and I think just out of the gate here, we did decide that that's not something we're implementing. That would be a down the road
No.
option as
Yep.
well, anyways.
Yep.
So
Yep. Yeah. So near on our focus, right? MVP is very
Yep.
minimally. Once we get past that point, we could prove this application works at a minimal standpoint. We start to extend it, make it broader, add more bells and whistles, because we have a base now that we can build off of, test off of. Once we get all of our infrastructure set up, it's going to be so much easier because we fail fast, right? If we want the perfect application, we'll never get it done. It'll probably take 6 months or so. But if we can get something in by 2-3 months, we have now a full-fledged application. We add little things in on top of it. Now it gets wider, but then we don't have to wait for a dependency, right? We already have a full-fledged application. Therefore, we can build and add features on the side as we go. Cool. Thank you, Jason.
thank
That's
you,
an awesome
Shashi.
presentation. All right. Next, we have M.
Hey everyone, so my name is Emily and I am a UX engineer on the team. And I will be talking about a recently added feature in our project, and that is the installation of Storybook. For those of you who are new to Storybook, on to the next slide. Storybook is a collaboration tool which serves as a development environment and playground for UI components. It allows you to create components independently and showcase these components interactively in an isolated environment that is separate from your main application. So what does this mean for you and the team? Using Storybook can enhance team development by having the ability to view the different components that have already been developed, view the different props that those developed components accept, visually be able to showcase these components to your stakeholders for feedback, and lastly, dynamically change props without going back and forth between the browser and your code editor. So all of these are great reasons why we added Storybook to our project. I am going to move on to the code base. So the basic install, which was my task, introduced 2 folders in our root directory. The first one is the .storybook folder. So this gave us 2 files. The first one is main.ts. This has the Storybook config, and the 2 required elements here that Storybook needs to work properly are one, the framework. So in our case, we're using Next.js, and also the stories element, which contain the relative paths to the location of our Storybook stories. NBX refers to the documentation files, and line number 6 refers to our actual stories for the components. So the second file inside the storybook folder is preview.ts. I didn't actually change anything here, but this refers to the way the stories are rendered. The only thing that I added here actually is line number 2, import globals.css. It's a very important line because globals.css has all of our Tailwind classes. Let's bring that up.
Is there a reason why it's CSS instead of Sass?
No particular reason. Haven't looked into that yet. But yeah, I don't have an answer right now.
Okay, it's just just asking. I think it is that because it's simple and it looks like it doesn't have much going on there anyways. Just a bunch of CSS variables, some imports and all that.
Yeah. So yeah, that was the only change that I did here. But very important change. Otherwise, all of our stories will look kind of plain and unstyled. Um, so moving on, the storybook install also added the stories folder down here in the root directory. Probably better to appreciate it if we spin up our storybook page, and we do that by running npm run storybook. Should open automatically into its own browser.
So I noticed that it's on port 6006. If we want the storybook to be exposed, does this mean that storybook is a separate application from our application that we're building?
Did you mean, are we going to is this page going to have its own preview? I mean, deployed.
Yeah. Yes.
At some point, we are going to do that, I believe. But
Why won't we do it now?
I don't know how to do that right now.
Okay, let me tell you, it's not your job to do it. You are a UX engineer on this team. If you need it, you ask the backend engineers and say, hey, this is going to be hosted on its own port. We need a separate URL for this. Can we figure out a task to get this up there?
Cool. I will take note. I just didn't think it was under the scope of the demo.
Oh, no. It's not under the scope of demo. I'm just asking a question.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But yes, in the future, this page will have its own deployment and URL to be shared with everyone.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, so the basic install comes with instructions right here on how to configure a project, and also an example folder. We have 3 components here: button, header, and page. These files will likely be edited or deleted at some point, but I thought that they might serve good reference for the team as we start to write our own stories, so I decided to keep them for now.
Yep, I think this is fine for now too as an example, because we don't have much yet until we build up more. But what I would like is to remove the examples once we're ready to go, and then only have the Gridiron components. That way, this is going to be the Gridiron UI component library, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. I also added a custom component. This is the button component right here under the Gridiron Survivor folder. Purely for testing, the styling and functionality of the button we'll be using on the project will be revealed in a future demo. And how this works code-wise is, let me switch over to the editor, is you import, open it first, sorry. Yeah. So in writing the stories, you import the custom button first, the top of the file, and they'll be ready to use in your stories. The button component starts with a documentation page, what you see here on the left side. This is automatically generated by Storybook by turning autodocs on. This is line number 10 right here. In fact, this whole object, the meta object, is actually the metadata associated with components and their documentation. I have fetched it out to add a description to the button component and also to the props. I also added the archetypes right here, so I can limit the user choice into 3 specific values for the specific size of the button. So each variant then needs to be exported as its own story with its arguments. This is required for them to appear on the page. So you can then change the props dynamically on the storybook page. So let's say, bring it up. Let's say for this button, we want to change the label to "Let's Go." We can do that, and maybe test how this would look on a larger button. We can change the size to large, and maybe add a custom class name. I created one that's called testing. This
Cool.
is on at the end of the globals CSS file. So we're 3px solid, and that's what the button gets. So yeah, that concludes my short demo. As we said earlier, at some point, our storybook page is going to have its own deployment to be shared with everyone. Looking forward to that. But we're all excited to use and get to know Storybook as we build out our UI library in Gridiron Survivor.
Cool. Thanks, Em. Any questions from anybody else? Anybody? Comments, questions? If you don't ask, I'm gonna expect you to write a story tomorrow.
I guess I have a question, and I'm not super familiar with storybooks, so this is probably going to sound like a stupid question.
No question is stupid.
My teacher said that to me once. She said, "There's never stupid questions, only stupid people."
I didn't say that. Okay.
Anyway, what is the advantage to using Storybook? Like, what are we even using it for? Like, I don't understand the implementation of it.
Great question.
It's more of a collaboration tool. So let's say, and testing, actually, if I wanted to ask, let's say Jaina, our designer, if like the button that I developed matches the design, I don't have to like spin up my application, show it to her, and just this match.
Okay.
You know, it's a separate page from our main app, so we kind of do away with the business logic and stuff like that, and she herself can test it like by changing the props. I mean, if she wants to see what would this button look like if the background is red, if we set it up like that she can change the background, then she can do it on her own. She doesn't need me.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Great explanation too. I like, as soon as you said that, I was like, okay, that
it clicked. Yeah, great. Now
think about it this way too. Okay, you guys have all used Tailwind, correct?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So what if Tailwind had no documentation and they just give you the code? You wouldn't know what's available.
That's fair.
Right?
That's fair.
So Storybook is a visual representation of all the components that we have, and it gives everybody an overview of what's available and whatnot. And like Em said, we don't have to build it and show to anybody. You can go to the Storybook domain, look and see what we have, and then also right now there's not much documentation behind the props. That's what Richard's going to do. He's going to go in and say all the sizes. Hey, these are all the sizes, and this is what it does and whatnot, right? So it'd be all documented. And then in Storybook too, for Karina's case, it does accessibility testing right inside Storybook.
That's
and
huge.
Then now Storybook 8 has the ability to do visual testing, which what Mai's going to talk about next about Playwright. It's going to visually test the component itself, and if you make any altercations, Storybook visual tester would know and say, hey, you need to re-up your test, right? So that because there's something changed. Is it supposed to change or not, right? There's a regression that occurred. So in that case, we're not only using it for our component library, we're using it to document our technical docs as well. It's going to be our welcoming page of all documentation. Richard's already creating it where it's going to be a welcome page of, hey, what is Gridiron Survivor, yada, 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 because it's an open source project, right? So we have to explain what it is. And then also our technical decisions and all that stuff will go in there. And then there'll be a component section where it's showing all the components we have. And then there'll be a section in intro saying we built this off of Shadson, and all of that, right? So it's like a one-stop shop for documenting the whole entire application at that point.
I love that this is our 5th or 6th stream and we still can't figure out how to say
Shad.
Whatever.
My only experience with Storybook, someone implemented it into a project that I'm maintaining and it broke all the folders and I never got access to it. So seeing it now, I'm like, well, I love this. I wish it was explained to me because this just I don't know why more people don't do this. It's great.
Yeah. Em, I have a question, and maybe I missed this in the whole thing. You still create the components
Mhm.
in Visual Studio. It just displays here in Storybook, or do you create the component in Storybook and it
No,
shows
good
up?
question.
Oh, great question.
I didn't miss that one.
Um, hmm. So in the basic install, they combined the React component and the stories file in one folder under the stories folder. Like if you look at the button here, this is from the basic install, the CSS, button stories, and the React component all in one folder. But in my case, I did it. Did I do it inside? I did. Okay. This is just a demo, but I think going forward, I prefer to put it in the React component in a components folder, and then for the stories, they will
Mhm.
be under the stories folder where they should be.
Could it possibly not be in stories but live in components, and then the component has the directory that houses the component, the story, the test files, and everything else inside of there, and then Storybook can capture that and read that, because that way we don't have multiple places where files are located for that component.
I'd have to
Something
think
to think
about
about.
that, but it's tentative. Maybe you would have to change um, this value though, maybe to add uh, that file, the storybook file. Tell Storybook where to find it. This has the locations of the files that Storybook will read from. So I'm thinking if you make changes to the location of the Storybook files, then make sure it's still Storybook is still able to read it by editing the storage element here in the config.
And I have an example for you. I've seen that, and now that I'm seeing this, I now actually get it. I worked on a project for Advent of JS, and that's how they had it organized and their thing for their example they were using. So I'll send you the example, but yeah, you can just point those to
Oh, cool.
components, start ****stories and whatever, and that'll work.
Yeah, I think, and to even answer that question you asked too, is a React component, it's completely separate. You bring that into a story, and then inside that story, you can use that component. So stories inside Storybook, you have to create a brand new story for it to show up. You can't just call the component directly. I mean, you could, but then it won't show up as its own story. And so stories are like a saved type to work within Storybook.
That makes sense. Thanks, Shashi and M.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
I hope I understood that question. I think did I answer that question? Okay.
Cool. Any other questions for M?
Go ahead and create that ticket for me, Em. I'll make sure that we get this running for on a separate port.
Yep. So that's the thing is I want y'all to understand that this is kind of what the project is. It's like a startup, and it's agile, right? Like, and also I'm making you guys learn. I'm not going to give you all the answers, and sometimes I forget too, to be honest. Like, but I already knew that we needed a separate domain, but it had to come down to this to figure out, like, oh, we do, yes, we do. Okay, work with Chris and Carlos and go and figure out how we can get this accomplished, right? Because if I feed you guys all the answers again like last time, then you won't learn from it. Because communication between cross-functional teams is a big thing, and we'll need to understand that and learn that. Even at job right now, like we have PMs, we have other developers, we have designers, all that stuff. Sure, I can review the design and skip the designer, but I'm not going to, because they want to review to ensure that it meets their specs. What if what I'm considering passes doesn't pass in their eyes, right? And how I'm building it. And this way, you have your own roles, your main role, right? We can cross function, that's fine, but you have your main role, and that's what you're going to do, and that's what we're going to help each other to do. Awesome. I did have a question for you. No, I'm good. Anybody else have any questions about Storybook? No, we are good. Thank you, Em. All right.
Great job.
Thank
We're
you.
saving the best for last. I do not see your screen. I think you gotta share again. Okay, there you go. I'll wait for you to switch it.
Okay. Is it good?
It is good.
Okay, perfect. Like you said, the best for last. I'm happy to be here. My name is Mai. I'm a functional engineer on the team, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about Playwright. So my objectives that I have on here is what is Playwright and how to install Playwright. And I'm going to demo 3 incredible tools that Playwright offers and also the VS Code extension with it as well. Just to preface this a little bit so you understand what Playwright is, it is an end-to-end testing. It's used for end-to-end testing. And as you can see, based off of the test pyramid here, at the top, it does take a little longer to run and cost a little bit more because we are emulating a user journey from the beginning when they land onto the page and how and trace almost every step all the way to the back end and figure out how the back end is responding to their requests. So just a little bit about Playwright itself. It's a free and open source framework used for end-to-end testing and automation, created and maintained by Microsoft. And one of the big things about it is that it is an API that allows developers and testers to write test scripts that will automate across different browsers, Chrome, Mozilla, and Safari itself. Other great features such as taking screenshots, recording videos, and many more that I will demo in a little bit. The types of testing that we'll be doing for our project from our team, we'll be doing some UI testing, API testing, accessibility testing, component testing. So all of these fun stuff we'll definitely be doing. And now we get into the fun project itself. Let's see. Playwright has great documentation, as you can see here. If you just go ahead and npm init Playwright at latest, it will go ahead and modify it based off JavaScript or TypeScript. And also one great thing about it is, let me see. It also makes a GitHub action for you as well, which is great. Definitely helps out with that. And you'll see here that when you go ahead and install it, you'll see that it'll say, hey, success. So we're going to run our first test here. I'm going to do PM Playwright test. As you can see, things are moving around down here. And it's running in a headless mode. So basically, it means like no other browsers are being showed up right now, hence the headless word. I wanted to show you.
And
Also,
headless, would it be running its own separate browser as well?
yeah, when you're doing headless, are you talking about like Chrome and Firefox and WebKit like that?
Mhm.
It's running its
Yeah.
own separate. Correct.
Yeah, like when you run it, then it pops up and it's running its own separate browser opposed to the one that you know how you have your browser open right now. It's not going to use that browser, right? It's going to go headless and use its own browser.
Oh, separate from
still-
the current
Mhm.
Chrome browser. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also wanted to show the HTML report that comes with it. As of the moment, you can see all of them passed. And if you want to look at each individual one, you can see how long it took each action, such as, launching the browser. It took 325 milliseconds. And for the Chromium test, and you can see that it does. You can also filter it by passed or failed or anything that's flaky, that was flagged as flaky. So you can see that in this HTML report. And I have another tool for us. Our first tool that I think it's really cool. Sorry. I have these commands written over here because I don't think I will remember it.
No
So,
worries. I think you won't like. It's just like Git commands. You won't remember them until you use them over and over again.
mhm. Oh yeah, definitely. I agree with that. So I wanted to show our first tool, our first cool tool that Playwright offers. This is called a trace viewer. And what it does, I love how Playwright explained it because Playwright states it is a time travel experience with watch mode. As you can see right up here at 0 seconds, it's think it's action is about to start, and then at about 200 milli 30 seconds, you could say, it starts kicking off and it shows you what it's doing, where it's opening up the browser and how long it took. So you can get to watch that in action, and you can run each action by itself. So if you just want to see get started link, how long did that take? You can get to see that action. And you were talking about visual testing earlier. I believe they have this to have screenshot action that you can do where they'll take a screenshot of your page and they'll compare the before and the after, what you expect it to look like and what it actually captured. And you can go ahead and be able to see the difference here in attachments. I haven't experimented with that enough with that yet,
That's
so I don't have that right now, but just want to bring it up in case if anybody was interested. Let's
cool.
see.
This is a cool feature. It's always
Mhm,
nice to, and I'm guessing when things fail, you can also use this tool to see what it looks like when it fails.
mhm. Yep, definitely. Also, it shows up in your VS Code extension. More to come on that soon. I also wanted to show the second tool. So we're gonna figure out how to debug. As you can see, our Playwright, this, let me know if it's too tiny for you guys. So this Playwright inspector pops up and it's a GUI tool, graphical user
GUI.
interface tool.
Yeah.
GUI. Okay. Yes. So what I love about this is that if you ever worked with Excel, Microsoft Excel, this is similar to how you would walk through like macros, if anybody is familiar
Mm.
with that at all. So this is what you do. So with Inspector, it allows you to walk step by step to see what's occurring. Is it going to the right page? Wait, I must press that twice. And it will check to see if it has the right title. And then it's done with that test. So we're running our second test here. As you can see, I think if I break it, okay. Did it? Let's see. Okay, these are all for Firefox now. As you can see, yeah, all these browsers are popping, so they are definitely getting run in the separate browsers. So fun stuff there.
Let's
As you
keep
can see,
going.
yeah. So as you can see, if you do get some a test that failed, you can definitely narrow it down and be
Nice.
able to figure out, hey, what happened? Why didn't it go through? And the error messages are very crisp and clear. So far that I have seen, and be able to help you narrow it down. And our last tool is our VS Code extension itself. So we want to make sure that we're going to the Playwright test for VS Code by Microsoft.com itself. And after you install it, you get a little chemical potion on the left side here. And as you can see, as you can see here, our tests are here. Oops. And you can see that you can click the buttons here and it will run it for you, and it will show, this one should show the browser, or you can
Got
go
it.
ahead
So those are the parameters, and instead of typing it manually, you can use
Mhm.
the tool, right? Okay.
Yeah, if you don't remember the commands, you can definitely use the VS Code extension. And one thing that I love is that, hey, if you're trying to figure out, I'm just going to copy this quick, this link. So if you are, let's see, you can go ahead and record a new, I want to make sure you see both screens. If you are unsure of how to write a test, you can go ahead and press record. Oops, okay, not this one. But hey, since we're already here, it will go ahead and locate it for you. And it will look, as you can see, let me bring it a little closer here. It will go ahead and write that for you. And if you want to, oops, sorry, I clicked that 3 times, but you can go ahead and
It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
yes. So as you can see, it's doing that at the moment. But if you are done writing your test, you can go ahead and exit out.
Do you know what that feature is called?
Code Gen.
Yes, yes, that's their code gen feature, and you demoed it perfectly. You can open it up in a browser or wherever you're at, and then as you're navigating as a user, Playwright will capture those actions and create those tests for you, so you don't have to write them. So it makes it very easy to write tests if you don't know how to write tests, or if you don't want to write tests, or it gets you a setup to get there. Then you can just alter it if you need to.
I love that because when I worked with unit testing, I didn't see that option. So maybe for unit testing.
Yeah.
Also, you can also debug here as well. And also, I just want to point out that, hey, if you're missing an extra button right here and you wanted to do something here, like I was missing a step before, you can go ahead and record at where the cursor was landing and add another line before it. So you don't have to go and try to copy and paste or add something else. You can just go back right into that specific line and add that line there. Yeah, so that's what some of the top 3 features that I know that we're going to use. So that's what I wanted to demo for you guys. Are there any questions?
Let me ask you this question. Where do you think is going to be an ideal place for us to write end-to-end tests with Playwright?
Oh, that's a great question. My the file structure for that is that I was thinking that we're gonna have a root directory for all of our tests here, located here, just minus the example.
So let me ask you this. Let's say we have 100 components, and now you want all of our tests there, correct? Like all the unit tests, all the end-to-end tests, every test. And then we go into a component and we make a modification there, but we need to update the unit tests and the end-to-end tests. The user, our developer, then would have to go to the test file and track it down, correct? And find that file.
For all of the unit and the end-to-end test, correct?
The alternative is to place all of those test files inside the component and then create a directory for that component. And let's say if you open up components right now in your components, can you open up? Yeah, open that up. And then let's say you have like off button, right? Now you create a directory for off button. Off button lives inside off button directory, but off button spec, off button test file, off button SAS, off button stories, if they all lived inside that directory, would there be a benefit to that opposed to decoupling them all out?
And when you say decoupling them all out, is you're saying that instead of having them live up in a root directory, it should all be inside the stay off button directory, correct?
When I say decouple is right now, the method I was describing, all the files will live under off button directory inside components. When you take it out, you're decoupling it out, and then you're placing it inside its own storage directory in the root, its own testing files in the root. When you look at when y'all think about the two, are there pros and cons to them, and which one would you prefer to go with?
That's a great question. I almost wanted to treat end-to-end testing and end-to-end testing and unit testing differently, because unit testing, I would prefer it to be within the off button. If, say, for example, off button, I would prefer it to be within the off button, so you know that that component is getting tested.
Okay.
And then with end-to-end testing, since it does test a whole range of other components with it, I was thinking that would be at the root directory.
Oh, we have a visitor. Okay, so I think that's something we'll have to discuss offline, is the structure of where everything lives. And we'll do a little exercise so that you guys can kind of figure out what's going to work best for the team long term, because whatever we start with, it's easier to start with that than to alter it later. So we'll go with that. But my initial question was, inside our application, right? Where do you see us best testing the UX? Like, is it as a user going through the flow? Is it the login? Are we looking to end-to-end test the ability to sign up, sign in?
Maybe because I haven't really done end-to-end testing, but I was thinking everything actually, such as, so yeah, the login, the sign up, how that communicates to the back end, and how the back end communicates back to the front end. So I was thinking everything.
Cool. And do you know the benefits to doing that, to doing it all? Why we would do that?
Let's see. Well, if I could guess, I would have to say we want to make sure that, like we mentioned the other day when sprint planning, is to make sure there's no network latency, to make sure that the users are getting to where they want to go, and that we're getting the right information to them. That's what I would have to guess.
Perfect. Yep, that's what we would do to mitigate our regressions, to ensure that our application is still functioning. Because let's say Chris goes and adds on the sign out, he goes and adds an additional page that says, "Hey, are you sure you want to sign out?" But our initial one was like, "Sign out, you're out," right? Our end-to-end test would fail and say, "This failed. Like, it's not working the way you want it to, but you're trying to merge this in." And then Chris would be like, "Oh, whoops. I need to update that end-to-end test so that it accommodates for the new prompt that asks them if they really want to sign up or not," right? Then the test will pass. So it kind of mitigates that and ensures that if any regressions happen, that will occur. Now, let's say we have that prompt, right? And someone accidentally deleted that somehow, some way. Our test would catch that and say, "Oops, like there's a failing test because there's supposed to be a prompt here and I don't see one." Then you can go and be like, "Oh, what's going on? Like, oopsies, one of the tests that one of the code changes I made caused an issue there, which caused a regression. I wasn't meant to do that. So I need to go fix my code so it doesn't do that."
Yeah, excited to be playing with Playwright. So it seems like really easy and beginner friendly. So thus far, knock on wood, haven't tried it, haven't really implemented it yet. So
awesome. That's great. Anybody else? Any questions? Comments? Excited?
Yeah, thank you, Mai. This was really great. I just also want to say that we can use it for accessibility. So if we connect to the Xcore library. And it's even me, like I'm always kind of like testing, but sometimes you forget. But it's nice to then you get the report that, oh, your Playwright test failed, and then I changed something, yes, and then the color contrast is not up to par anymore. So it's like it kind of like, in case you forget something, it reminds you that. So it's nice to have that integrated with your GitHub Actions.
Cool. Anyone else? Awesome. I can say that end-to-end testing, we will be using that. Everything we build, if it's functional or UI or UX, we will be adding unit tests and end-to-end tests. So we started that right away. Your PR will not be approved unless if you write one or add one or update one. This way we keep our testing suite strong. Like, it's not like TDD, like test driven development, because that's supposed to be writing tests first and going to code. I'm not a big advocate of that. Some people are, but it's still writing code, testing it, and ensuring that it's not going to be merged in unless if we have some test that covers for that. So the features we write will have those items, and we'll continue to do that. And reviewers will have to be diligent to understand that too, because sometimes when you write some code, it's hard to know what it's actually testing, right? Sometimes we write blatant tests that just pull up the component and that's it, and it still pass, but you're not writing for the conditions you have, the variance you have, and all that stuff. So those are things that we'll learn along the way and will improve along the way. So a lot of stuff coming through the fold, and hopefully in 2 weeks here time we'll have new demos and new things to share and all of that. I want to give these individuals working on this project some time to complete some things and complete some features as we go through this process. So anybody with any last words? Not everybody speak at once, please.
I think everyone who spoke today did a phenomenal job. Jason did an awesome job talking about Appwrite, and all the cool things that Appwrite is bringing to the table. I think Carlos did an excellent job just on Docker. I love how that we're using Docker to avoid the, doesn't work on my machine type issue that I think someone pointed out very early on in the stream. Thank you so much just for walking through Storybook. I think it's really cool. I have very limited experience, and what you went through really helped understanding it. And then my testing, I'm still learning about testing. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but it's learning to be my favorite thing, and it will become my favorite thing in this project. So thank you, everyone.
You're going to learn so much about testing in this project. Awesome. Yep. Thanks again to Carlos, Jason, Mai for presenting today. These are kind of the sprint demos. I know I said they should be less than a few minutes long, but we have questions, we have comments, all this stuff. And this is really good to collaborate and to learn and to challenge one another. I hope my questions to y'all aren't overbearing. I know it's tough because you're live and everything, but I try not to ruin you. I try to make you better. So yes, so if you don't know any of the questions, that's totally cool. Like, that's why I asked, so that you can gain that understanding, and I'll explain it to you as I know how as well. If not, then we can go learn it together. So thank you everybody for joining us. Next time we will hopefully have more demos, different demos, and then as we continue to build this project, we'll continue to share. So look forward to seeing y'all in the next one. Thank you.